Okay, so we should get started. The Central Falls School Board of Trustees will begin at 5:31 p.m. We'll do a roll call. Sonia Gray,
Present.
Diosa Martinez,
Present.
Andrew Bramson,
Present.
Glenda Liz Colon,
Present.
Brian Estrada.
Present.
Okay, we have a quorum. Before I continue, I'm just going to remind folks about interpreting services. Para los que se unen con nosotros hoy en la reunión y quieren escuchar la reunión en su idioma, en español, pueden hacer clic abajo donde dice interpretation o interpretación. Hacen clic ahí y escogen español y hay alguien que va a interpretar la reunión hoy. I don't see our Portuguese interpreter, so I don't think we have to do that interpretation. All right, moving on. The next item is the consideration of meeting minutes of October 22nd. I'll entertain a motion to approve
So moved.
Second.
by Brian Estrada, seconded by Andrew Bramson. Comments,
Aprovado por
questions?
Brian Estrada.
Obtain. I was.
Okay,
Me too. Abstain.
So then
Okay.
I have 3. So 3 of us will abstain.
3 abstentions, okay.
Ustedes van a abstener.
Any other comments, questions? Hearing none, motion was made by Brian Estrada, seconded by Andrew Bramson. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 I am also an aye.
Sorry, I said aye. I said aye, even though I said I was going to abstain. Sorry.
That's okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so abstentions are Diosa, Glenda Liz, and Sonia. Thank you. Okay, the next item is the Central Falls School District budget. Item 4A is the consideration of bills, grants, and general budget. Dr. Toledo or Sonia, do you all want to speak to that? I know that I don't think we approved bills last meeting. So wanted to.
So I have the packet from the last meeting, and then I
Mhm.
have one that I received yesterday. The one from
Okay.
yesterday, I have not had a chance to review. I'm sorry.
Okay,
But I
Um,
did review the one that would have been in last meeting's agenda that I wasn't here to speak on. So we could approve those.
okay.
And then if you
Uh,
want, you can also approve the ones pending my review if I, so we don't delay the processing of them.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that makes sense. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes as of yesterday, November
Bills,
4th.
Stephanie, the bills. You said the meeting minutes.
I'm sorry. Did I say meeting minutes? I'm really sorry. I'll entertain a motion to approve the bills as of yesterday, November 4th, pending further review by Vice Chair Grace.
Moved.
So moved by Sonia Grace,
Second.
seconded by Brian Estrada. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Diosa, was that an aye? I'm sorry, I just,
Yes, it was an aye.
okay. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. The next item is item 4B, which is fiscal year 21 budget review, update, and discussion. I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Toledo, or to Carrie, who's also on the call.
Yes, Director Simmons, you want to share, and I'll share my screen for your slide.
Sure, thank you. While Dr. Toledo's pulling up the budget, just some background information. Madam Chair and Board, I know you asked for us to share with you the final audit report that has not been finalized by the state yet. The final draft or the presentation from our audit company has gone to the state. We're just waiting on their review. So once they approve it, we will present it to you, and then I guess we can have discussion from there as you see fit. Secondly,
Carrie, can I interrupt you for one quick second? And I'm really sorry. I actually just, for some reason on my screen, I couldn't see that our Portuguese interpreter is here. I'm very sorry, Felipe. Sonia, do you mind doing a quick interpreting
Sure.
about the language?
Para aqueles que precisam de intérprete em português, cliquem um botão embaixo do ecrã que diz Interpretation e escolhem a Liga de Português. Temos espanhol e português, mas se quiser português, pode ouvir a reunião em português através do clique do Interpretation.
Thank you. Carrie, the floor is all yours. Sorry about that.
no problem at all. Thank you. So regarding FY21, where we are now, as I'm sure we're all aware that a budget has not been passed for any of the school districts in terms of what their actual funding will be in support of the state. Some districts have their own budget according to what the town can afford, but the state's portion has been pretty much, I want to say again, it's about 97% of what we normally would receive. We have been receiving all of our funding. As you can see by the graph that's in front of you. However, with at 93%, once you move to where we are now, with minimal state aid and stabilization aid, at this point, it's about $1 million short of what we normally would have. I figure in terms of our operations that it kind of makes sense given them about the amount of money that they're giving out on COVID. I was on a meeting today of business managers, and I learned from Rye that there is not a decision for FY21 as of yet due to the political field, and FY22 is in the making. So they're trying to provide us as much information as they can, trying to be as supportive as they can, but with limited information, they're just not able to, and they know about the hardships that it poses on districts. But with that, again, as I said during the last time, I'm not overly concerned as of this moment, as I look out, seeing the amount of money that we are receiving in CARES relief, and doing what we can to make sure that our normal operational costs go under that umbrella. So for the CARES Act, what's new this board meeting, which wasn't last board meeting, is that you knew that we applied for 1.8 million, and we actually drew down 1.2 million. It was not prudent or ethical to draw down the whole 1.8 million because that was supposed to be a period of time up through December. December hasn't happened yet. November's just getting in place. So we didn't want to ask for our relief before the actual operations and the costs take place. For the ESSA funds, as of last night or yesterday afternoon, after sending this slide, we've actually locked up 1.5 of the 1.5 that's allotted to us. So we will begin drawing down on that. You'll see an update for the next board meeting. And the governor relief funds, I believe that those discussions are actually happening right now. So once we get that information, we'll be able to give it back and present it to you. I already spoke on the audit. And again, we are still looking to receive throughout this portion of the year, $46 million, which will be able to take care of our projected cost. So that's my presentation as of tonight. And Dr. Toledo, if I've forgotten anything, please remind me.
No, thank you so much, Director Simmons. I think you covered it. But questions from the board?
Any questions or comments for Carrie? All right, hearing none. Thank you again, Carrie. I know that, with the elections having been more or less finalized in terms of, at the state level, it's still unclear how it's still unclear whether folks are going to meet prior to the end of the year. And so certainly, I'm watching that closely, but haven't seen anything on, through social media or through any other avenue that indicates that they're going to come together to discuss the passing of a budget anytime soon. So that's unfortunate, but all right, well, thank you. One thing I want to do is that this is actually the second time I do this, so shame on me, is that I skipped over the personnel memo, the HR memo. And so want to go back to item 3, consideration of personnel actions, including any new appointments, layoffs, rescissions, resignations, recalls, and retirement. We did have an HR memo in our packet. So I will entertain a motion to approve the HR memo. Well, a second, and then a discussion.
Motion to approve the HR memo.
Second.
Motion made by Vice Chair Gray, seconded by Diosa Martinez. Any comments or questions for the superintendent on the memo? I see that we have a new nurse.
Yes.
Which is great. And based on the notes, is replacing one of the nurse vacancies. Dr. Toledo, do you want to speak a little bit to just sort of what our nurse vacancy looks like now and how we're planning to distribute the nurses we do have?
Yeah, so this is exciting. We are up to 4 nurses now, officially on the team. And that's up from 1 as we started in September. So this is great news. We are still down 2 because even though in previous school years we were working with 5 district-wide, given the pandemic, we feel it's important to have a nurse in every open school. So our goal is still to get to 6. And had dedicated some of the COVID-related funds to do that, to ensure that every school that is open has a nurse. So we are still looking to hire 2 more nurses, but otherwise very pleased with how we've grown the team and are very excited about the 3 new nurses, including the newest one appointed tonight.
Great, thank you.
So I'm sorry. So will this nurse, will she be assigned to a school? And which school would that be? Or will she be rotating?
So we hire on the nurses district-wide, but do work to have them stay in one building. The reason it's not decided is we're still shuffling. So for example, the one nurse we started with, Marie Grist, is usually at the high school, but because of having younger students in person, we've shifted her into an elementary. So there is still a bit of a chess game of staff members this year. But long term, once we have 6, we would intend to have each one stay in the assigned school.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else for the superintendent? Yes, I thought you might had, I thought I saw that you unmuted yourself, but I could be wrong.
Oh, but was, no,
Oh,
I don't have any questions.
oh, okay. Okay, just making sure. All All right, so the motion was made by Vice Chair Gray, seconded by Diosa Martinez. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The HR memo is approved. Moving on to item 5, under new business 5A, face mask policy.
Okay. So I'm actually just going to share my screen again to give slight visual as we talk through some of these new business items. So to present. Okay, so in your packet this evening, we have, we're doing a first reading of a policy on face masks. And while there have been no issues yet, it was strongly encouraged by our new legal counsel to establish a policy, really to just maintain the continued safety and success that we are having with all of our students and staff members and visitors, although those are minimal these days, wearing a mask at all times. So the policy really aligns with CDC best practice. It was actually constructed for multiple Rhode Island districts who share legal counsel, which is also a cost plus that we sort of all chip in a little bit to have certain policies developed and then tweak for our own, which will happen through this process of bringing it to all of you. And so it really is just to make sure that those protections are in place. But again, we have had no issues yet, and everyone is being incredibly collaborative to make sure that we all keep each other safe.
Great, so because it's a first reading, it doesn't require our vote, but I do want to open it up for any questions or comments from board members. I can't see all of you at the same time on my screen, so you can just speak up if you have a question or comment.
Trying to find the exact wording, but it was, I think, section V, the first paragraph. I think clarification on the wording, it sounded kind of weird because it was like, if teachers or students are with parents, or like it was like alone, but like one had to do with parents and the other one had to do with students. So
Okay,
I guess just the wording, if there's a way to separate the sentences so it's a little bit more clear.
will do.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I do.
Sonia?
Stephanie. So sorry. So the purpose is specific to COVID-19. So it talks, that's why we're creating this. Is there any language, do we want to add any a sunset to this? To speak to either it's continuing past the pandemic or it ending when the pandemic is officially over, or how do we ensure that it doesn't just sort of sit there forever and ever without it ever being touched, looked at again, should it need to be looked at, revised, because it's specific to a point in time and a very specific experience that we're having right now.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a great recommendation to consider adding language, even if the date of that sunset is to be determined. But
Yeah.
we could add something to make sure that it doesn't exist in the policy document forever after, once we are past this. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. All right, anything else from others? All right, well, thank you for bringing this to us, Dr. Toledo. The next item is item 5B, Memorandum of Agreement for SBA COVID-19 Capital Fund.
Exciting news. We have the opportunity to receive $217,000 to support improving our HVAC and ventilation and filtration, all things related to air quality. And so I bring it forward to the board as it is actually the Board of Trustees who receives the funds. So it would require all of your signatures. but we are excited at the possibility of putting these funds to use and actually using some of our other COVID funds, not specific from the SBA, to make sure we can actually reach all the schools with this improvement. So this will cover some, but not all of the costs. But we believe that through the COVID funds that Director Simmons had shared about before, we actually will be able to make these improvements to all the schools. And then separate, though related, we received confirmation today that the state is giving us 287 air purifiers. So in addition to these improvements through the HVAC, we're excited that we will also have an air purifier in every single classroom. So especially as we approach temperatures, the seasons where windows open is quite uncomfortable. It'll be great to have improved air filtration and air purifiers running, just to continue to raise the bar of the air changes per hour and keeping everyone as safe as possible.
And so you need a vote from us tonight in addition to the signatures, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So why don't I entertain a motion to approve the memo pertaining to the SBA COVID-19 Capital Fund?
Moved.
A motion made by Andrew Bramson, seconded by Vice Chair Grace. Any discussion, comments, questions?
The signatures are due to ride early next week. And so Millie and I will be reaching out to each of you for your signature. Thank you.
All right, so hearing no questions or comments, all those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. Thank you. Finally, under new business, item 5C, discussion on presentation on school resource officers, also known as SROs. I want to point out that this was a conversation that we asked the superintendent to bring forth the presentation about SROs, how they function in our schools, really as a response to the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. I know Board Member Bramson had particular questions about the role of SROs in our schools, and so want to thank you, Board Member Bramson, for elevating it, and you, Dr. Toledo, for bringing it to us today. I know that it had been on the agenda earlier in earlier agendas, but things just kept getting moved. So I'm glad that we can have this conversation today. So I will turn it over to you, or maybe Principal McCarthy.
I was going to say you can turn it over to me, but I'm really going to turn it over to two guests. So I want to thank both Principal McCarthy as well as the Colonel for being here, both of whom wanted to share a bit about what is an incredible relationship between our SROs and the district. So just want to start there. While I know that certainly the national conversation doesn't always go that way, we're very grateful for having these supports and the relationship between the SROs and our students. So I'll turn it over to Principal McCarthy first, and then the Colonel.
Principal McCarthy, I think there you go.
Yeah, thanks. Stephanie's laughing because that's happens all the time. Thanks very much for having me. I'll just speak very briefly and turn it over to the Colonel. But as Dr. Downey Toledo said, we really have an excellent relationship with both our SROs, Officer Randy and Officer Stephanie at Calcutt. And I think first and foremost, any school resource officer it's all about safety, the safety of our kids, the safety of the adults in the building. And so the SRO fulfills a number of very important roles within that context. Certainly one is security, both in terms of advising us in terms of our crisis response plans, whenever there are issues, and we have had issues, certainly over the past 3 years, helping to take the lead in terms of coordinating responses, meeting with our restorative team, with Roberto Rivera, and making sure that we're following the protocols that we need to, and making sure that our communication with the police and what we're doing within the school are continue to be smooth, whether it's in an immediate situation or planning for the future. I think probably the most important piece about school resource officers are the relationships that they develop with kids. They really are another support staff and prevent so many potential conflicts. There are kids who are going to be more drawn to talking to a police officer than they are going to be talking to me, for instance, or to a teacher. And I think especially when you have some longevity, as we've had at the high school with our SRO in years past, those relationships tend to develop over the years and become even more powerful. So when we talk about safety, we know that relationships are really the most important thing that drives a school being safe. And the SRO fulfills a very important role in terms of that. A lot of times, SROs can provide context for us about things that are going outside of the building, certainly not breaching confidentiality, but providing a perspective and context which can really help us as things start to present themselves in the building. Randy will be one of the first people we'll go to ask if there's anything we need to be aware of if there are escalating tensions. Mediation, while similar to our restorative, our own restorative staff, Randy does a lot of mediation with kids and families. Sometimes we have conflicts that involve families more than they involve kids, and the SRO plays a key role in terms of supporting that process as well. And finally, coordinating community resources. So for instance, we have tech distribution that'll be going on that Dr. Downey Toledo will be talking about shortly. And we'll need to close off a street for a short period of time. Police, fire, our SROs coordinate that and make sure that there's a presence to make sure that everybody's keeping safe, socially distanced. Any of those types of situations that are special events, the SRO is the point person in terms of that. Another question that Dr. Downey Toledo asked me to talk about is, in the absence of SROs, how would the school look different? And I think that I can really say that we would be much more reactive than proactive. And I think that, you know, as I said, as I often say about school resource officers, sometimes it's tough to measure their effectiveness because we don't really know how much they actually prevent just through their presence and then through the thinking that they do beforehand. So I definitely feel that they would be more reactive. We would have more student arrests. There are countless times where I know at the high school where we have not had an arrest because of the way that the SRO has chosen to address this situation. Keeping in mind first and foremost that he is a police officer. He also understands that that we're dealing with young men and women that have a lot of complicated things going on in their lives. And without that context, without having the SRO and then having to call the police, we would have more arrests, I think, because a lot of that would be in a vacuum. And then finally, I think that there would be less context. There would be less context when police do come into the building around our students. Our SROs not only communicate with us, but they communicate with the police department. And so that relationship, that connection between school and the police department, which starts with the colonel and filters down, really the SROs play a really key role in that. So I would say those are the things that immediately come to mind. And I did consult with Roberto Rivera, who is a really important person for us in terms of the building and works very closely with our SRO as well as I do and Jamie does. And I know that's true at Calcut as well with Principal Milisauskas, who's no longer there, but that was his relationship with the SRO there as well.
Thanks so much, Principal McCarthy. And I just want to echo not only what what he was sharing is true for the two schools where the SROs are, but even in the last 2 days, Officer Randy, who's at the high school, has texted either myself or Assistant Superintendent Lynch when there might be activity going on near a school, just to give us a heads up. And so as an example, yesterday, after consulting with Randy, we decided, because of some activity going on outside of a school, to bring kids in from recess and have a lockdown. But it's very helpful communication. So with that said, and the benefits to actually all 6 schools, I'll turn it over to the Colonel.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. I'd like to speak a little bit about our program. We've been running a very successful school resource officer program for the last 10 years. We're able to reestablish.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you. You sound far away.
Turn my volume up a little bit. Is that better?
A little bit better, yeah. I'll let you know if I can't hear you. Sorry about that.
Speak up. I'm a little soft-spoken. We've been having a very successful school resource officer program for the last 10 years. We were able to reestablish this program after it went to bunk for a period of time by receiving a U.S. Department of Justice COPS grant, which is a community policing oriented services grant. I believe this program has been beneficial for the police department and our staff, as it has been for the school department and our student body. Every member of this agency that has had the privilege and opportunity to be a school resource officer speaks fondly of their experiences and always comment that it was the most rewarding assignment of their career. The direction of the SRO program is derived from a memorandum of understanding, which is created and signed by myself and the superintendent. The MOU is a working document and is updated every year, so the needs and direction of the SRO program can evolve as needed. An SRO provides a sense of security for students, parents, teachers, and support staff by their mere presence in the school, and they also serve as a deterrent to outside threats. Our SRO program goes much deeper than that, as their job is sometimes to be a coach, a counselor, a confidant, a role model, and in many instances, a friend. SROs help build bridges between the community and the police department. Parents and students build relationships with the SROs, which have proven to last the officer's entire career and beyond. The ability to have SROs help students through their school years builds a strong level of trust in our officers as well. Our agency utilizes a strong community policing philosophy throughout the department. This philosophy has expanded to the creation of a community policing division, which consists of a community policing unit, which works with community members to solve problems, our elderly affairs officer, who works with the seniors in our community to build resilience against them becoming victims of crimes, and our school resource officers work directly with our teachers and student and school administrators to ensure every student has the ability to learn in a safe and comfortable environment. Many questions are posed regarding the arrests our SROs make of youth and young adults in the schools. The SROs are trained in the restorative practices that the school administration utilizes and play a role in their implementation. If a situation or incident can be handled by restorative measures rather than arrest, that option is always exercised. Although arresting individuals is not a primary function of our SROs, there are times when arrests have to be made. SROs rarely, if ever, make this decision on their own. They consult with school administrators prior to making the final decision to arrest, unless an emergency situation prohibits it. In the rare instances of an arrest in the school, SROs ensure the utmost dignity, respect, and confidentiality measures are taken to ensure students are not embarrassed. If an arrest is made, the SROs will communicate with our juvenile services detective and will see if the student qualifies to attend our juvenile hearing board, which keeps our juveniles out of the court system. Our GHB has been doing some fantastic work, as we've been recognized, commended, and awarded additional grant funding by the state for the outstanding community service we provide. We're currently also looking to update our juvenile hearing board requirements to allow certain juveniles one additional option of the board, even if they have already used its services previously. I'd like to draw some attention to some of the additional services our SROs provide to our students are not usually recognized. I mean, they've provided food to students in need. They've helped students find housing that were homeless. They've helped remove some students from abusive homes and abusive relationships till those relationships could be mended, and have provided some basic essentials to students in need that they might not have otherwise had. Our SROs have developed the Shop with a Cop program, which officers from our department accompany 25 students to a local Target store, enjoy lunch together, and then bring them on a $100 shopping spree throughout the store. This happens right before the holiday season. It's something we've done for the last 2 years and look to continue ongoing. It's just a measure of our commitment to the community. The SROs also co-sponsor community programs such as Touch a Truck, Coffee with a Cop, Chillin' with a Cop, New England Revolution soccer games, and National Night Out to help bring resources and opportunities to our students within the community. I want to ensure everyone the relationship between the police department and the school department has never been stronger, as we continuously work together to ensure we provide every student in our community with a safe and comfortable learning environment. I believe the establishment of the SRO program has been one of the greatest contributors to help build a strong working relationship and has helped build a great deal of trust in our police department throughout our community. I remain available for any questions anyone might have.
Great. Thank you. Thank you both for being here and for walking us through that. You know, your sort of your thoughts about school resource officers in our schools. I have a number of questions, but I would love to open it up to board members first to ask questions, make comments. And just to be clear, we're not voting on anything today. Today is really just a chance for us to ask questions and you know, maybe provide some feedback, but there's no vote taking place today. Oh, Andrew, sorry, I couldn't see you on my screen. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Colonel and Principal McCarthy. I appreciate the overview. This probably question is directed more to the Colonel. In terms of the assignment of officers, what's the process for how is that determined? Is that at the sole discretion of the department, or is that a collaboration with the school district? And how long do those assignments last, and what does the rotation look like?
So in the past, we've had superintendent sit on our interview board when we reestablished the SRO program. We asked the SROs to basically give us at least a 4-year commitment is what we're looking for. It takes time to really, you know, get comfortable with the function, learn the students, and really embrace the program, learn the restorative measures. And it's not something we want to have a revolving door. So when we open up that program, we traditionally ask for a 4-year commitment on the minimum. Now, there are opportunities sometimes within the police department where an officer assigned to that might be up for a promotion or a different assignment. We try not to stymie their career, but we do try to keep consistency with that. And once again, our MOU really drives the direction of the program. So as I mentioned, if there's things that the SRO could be required to do, or we want to change the role of it, like I said, it's an evolving document, so that's always up for review and for dialogue with that as well.
Thank you. I appreciate the answer.
Anyone else? Brian?
Yeah. Hi. I have a few random thoughts and questions. I'll just go like one, and then I'll see if anyone else has anything before I start thinking about the others. But this one is, I guess, a bit for the Colonel and maybe for Principal McCarthy. I know, so Andrew brought up how, or rather he asked about the assignment and who gets assigned. I'm wondering, because you mentioned community policing, are the officers that are currently in the schools from the community, originally from the community? And if not, when you consider officers to be in those positions, is that something that's actually considered? Or like, what's the process for that, I guess?
Yeah, so Officer Ruano was assigned to Calcut. That position is being changed this year out of her request. She wanted to advance to another position. Like myself, Officer Ruano grew up here in Central Falls, so it was something meaningful for her. We've had several officers through the years that did come from the community at one point. Now Lieutenant Rodriguez was a school resource officer. He's also an alumnus of the Central Falls school system. He had the opportunity there. Not every school resource officer that's been assigned there to either one of the schools has necessarily been either alumnus of the school department or a resident of the community. But we've had some really good success, even with officers from outside this community going in there and really embrace the students. So it's not necessarily a prerequisite. It's because it's not really a prerequisite for a police officer to specifically be from this community. So having a 40 officer department, it's not always an option. But when officers put in for that position, their ties to the community and their involvement in the community is always taken into consideration prior to assigning them to that position.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Diosa.
No, I just would like to know is age is a factor when they are thinking of assigning any police to the school? Like the
age of the police officer? Not necessarily, or it's going to be a deciding factor. We're hesitant to put newer officers into a position like that. Usually what we like to do is one of our new officers come on the job, we'd like to make sure they understand the role of the police officer from the patrol function first before they advance on. So usually you'll see the officers that take that position have traditionally been in the patrol division for a period of time. Most often they've been training officers, which we help train new officers. So it's not usually a position we put a new officer in immediately. So hopefully that answers your question, but it's not based specifically on an age, but more as a experience type position.
Glenda Lee.
I have a question. Thank you, Colonel Barsakowski, for educating us more on the SRO program. I have seen Randy at work and he's phenomenal. I would like you to speak more on what types of situation would bring to a student arrest. Just a little more on that. Educate me, please. Thank you.
Absolutely. So like I said, often, depending on what the situation that takes place, if you have an incident took place and there was, let's say, a victim of this crime, whether it be an assault, they can really, of another student, that student or their parent can really drive the fact that they want to go forward with the charge rather than possibly use a restorative practice or maybe a mediation session to try and resolve it. So in some instances, that decision might not be necessarily be taken. It might be taken out of our hands. It might not be a decision the officer can make. I'm sure as a principal can attest to it. In most of these instances, if the arrest has to be made, before the officer makes that decision, they consult with the school and see if there's other options that we could utilize rather than make an arrest. It's usually a last result. And I just want to make one additional comment about arrest because there's a stigmatism about that. There are some instances where an actual arrest of a student would be beneficial. And I want to take this full circle for you. Early in my career, I was assigned as a juvenile services officer, and I was involved in prosecution through our juvenile hearing board as well as through the family court. And I say prosecution, but understand when a student goes to court, they're not necessarily being, prosecuted. There are some instances where some of our students might need services beyond what can be provided by the school, beyond what can be provided by their parents, and beyond what can be provided by our police department. So there are some students that might have had some serious problems happen to them. And sometimes assigning this case to the court system, working with DCYF to have what's called a DOS evaluation completed, sometimes brings some real light to some of these issues that the juvenile might be having. It's tough to throw resources at a juvenile if we don't understand the underlying issue of what type of resources they need. So a lot of times we'll use the court and their services to conduct these evaluations that we wouldn't otherwise be able to conduct Now, date myself, back in 2005, when I was assigned there, I believe the cost of a DOS evaluation was somewhere between $5,000 and $6,000. DCYF and the state pick up the cost of that evaluation. So if this juvenile had a traumatic incident happen to them, this evaluation could bring it to light, and then we can actually have the court help assign and pay for the services that this child might need. So, so there are some instances where, after consulting with administrators, after consulting with the family, bringing a child into court could have some benefits to them. So that also has to be weighed. But in most instances, the arrest could be driven by an outside source. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you.
Sonia.
Hello, I have two questions. Well, one is, two questions. So one is if you could speak to the relationship of the SROs with the Juvenile Hearing Board, and also thinking about evaluation and metrics of the SRO. Is there something that is set in the beginning of the school year as a goal in conjunction, either where in your department, Colonel, or in conjunction with the school, and then evaluation and metrics that drive either the work that the SRO does or the work that the school does in conjunction with the SRO? So those two things, if you could speak to them.
Okay. I think the first question, so if there is an arrest made at the school, last thing we want to do is put one of our youth into the court system. So luckily we have the reestablishment of our juvenile hearing board. So what would basically happen is anytime if an arrest is made there, our SRO will communicate with our juvenile services detective and see if that particular juvenile qualifies for the juvenile hearing board. So the juvenile hearing board is made up of a body of basically city leaders, residents, business owners. And if the juvenile and their parent agree to go in front of the juvenile hearing board, basically they admit to any wrongdoing they might have been involved in, and then they hear their cases heard in front of this board, and they'll come down with some sanctions. It could be something like a letter of apology, maybe attending a program, maybe some community service inside the community, and they have to meet that. But the stipulation, the way the juvenile hearing board is set up, it's only like one free bite at the apple. You only have the opportunity to go there if you've never been arrested before. As I mentioned earlier, we're looking to see if there's certain instances that we can change our juvenile hearing board to allow if somebody went through the juvenile hearing board maybe a year or two previous and completed everything, maybe there's an opportunity for them to go to the hearing board again if we think it'll be successful. So that's basically how a referral with the hearing board will go. As far as metrics for, when we go into, I think the administration and the principals can probably speak to it a little bit better, but it seems like every year there's new challenges. There's new challenges within the school for, creating programs, whether it be safety programs or, new restorative measures. As the school administration is continuously evolving and getting better and better at their craft, our SROs become a part of that. So a lot of that is driven by the direction of the school. And as I mentioned, if there's something that will change, we'll look to have a meeting and discuss and make sure it goes in our MOU. Now, evaluations on every officer are conducted on a yearly basis by their immediate supervisor. So the SROs have a couple of supervisors within the department. So they have a supervisor on the day shift, which is only a shift commander, and the captain, who's in charge of professional standards and services, basically goes over, oversees the entire community services division. So we use different techniques within our department and tracking mechanisms to track, everything an officer does, whether it be good, bad, or just general information. And from there, we basically complete an evaluation on every person that's directly under your command. But, mentioning it now, the fact that they are working more with the school, maybe get some insight from the school administrators will help us make those evaluations a little stronger. That's something we could definitely look at. Hopefully that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
Sonia, did you have a second question or okay. Principal McCarthy, I think you were going to respond.
I was just going to say that as the Colonel said, from an evaluation standpoint, that's the SRO is a police officer first and foremost, and so that's where the evaluation would take place, although certainly welcome to be part of that process if that's the choice of the police department. I think that in terms of metrics that that the SRO would be involved in for the school is really around our school safety metrics and how we can best prepare, especially. So for instance, starting a couple of years ago, we started putting cones up at dismissal and making sure that we had essentially a walking zone for students who are dismissed out of the high school. So the SRO, Randy, played a key role both in determining what would be the best way to do that. And he provides a presence. He's out there every single day to provide a sense of security. We've had, in collaboration with the police department, we've had active shooter drills at the high school. And our team has also participated to learn how we need to respond in terms of that. That's a mutually beneficial exercise, I think, for both the police department, but also for school officials. So I think that when we look at our crisis response plan, when I review goals with Roberto Rivera, who's our director of security and operations, oftentimes Randy is intimately involved in any of those plans that we have. The last thing I would say is in terms of any crisis, Randy is also involved in our processing of how we reacted to that and gives his response. And so from that standpoint, he helps us support our specific metrics in that way as well.
Great, thank you. Ugo, I see you raised your hand.
Yeah, I just want to add to what Mr. McCarthy just said. And I feel like these officers also have a good relationship with the students, which is good. And you know, beyond law enforcement, SROs, I think, also serve as educators, emergency managers, and informal counselor for our students. And this is, I think it's very important for them. I remember last year when I was going to the high school, and I see that they are, I see the relationship between the students and these officers. I think this is great that we have these officers in our schools. I just want to add that.
Thank you.
Brian, I know you have a few more questions.
Yeah, I have a bunch. Sorry. So there's a few things. I guess I'll bring up the first part, the evaluation process, only because that was like recently brought up. I'm wondering if, aside from the supervising officer evaluating, is there a way of getting students involved in the evaluation process? And if so, what could that potentially look like? Since they are the receivers of the support, right? And then keeping that in mind, I guess I'm also interested to hear if there's, you speak on how some of the officers say that it's like been one of their most like rewarding assignments, right, in their career. I'm wondering what it looks like on the student end of things as well. Just thinking about like keeping the students at the center of the conversation and what that may look like. So I'm not sure if there's been an opportunity for that, or if there's a possibility like as like a student survey or something like school-wide that would allow for, I guess, both sides of the story, right? So yeah, that's where that's the first part. I guess if you can respond to that, and then I'll go to the next part.
Absolutely. As soon as you said evaluation for the student, the first thing that came to my mind was a survey to get some input from our students, which is vitally important. It could help, drive some of the directions in the programs that we also help implement in the future. So definitely open to that. I think that would also bring to light, the opportunity for some students to comment on some of the things that having the SRO there have done for them. I'll just give you a couple of stories that I've gotten from my side. I'm sure that, there's much more detailed reciprocal stories from our students, but there's some students that our school resource officers have helped out. I want to talk about a couple of them specifically, just to shed some light on this. I won't take too long. We have one of our officers on the police force now was a member of the high school, and we reestablished our SRO program. And our SROs established an internship program for any student that was interested in maybe a career in law enforcement to kind of give them some background on it. And again, this is just another great opportunity for our officers to be ambassadors for this police department and to help guide youth into a career path. So that particular that particular student, went through the intern program, was very successful in it, really enjoyed it, enrolled immediately in college after to get his required credits, volunteered in this community, worked a part-time job in this community in the summer because he's dedicated to this community. And 3 years ago was hired by this police department, is doing a fantastic job, and most recently was assigned to our community service unit. Once again, paying it forward, giving back to the community from the police department perspective. We have another individual student that was from a broken home and really bonded with one of our SROs that was here a few years back. And basically, this SRO kind of guided him in a career path. Right after high school, he joined the military. As soon as he got home on leave from the military after boot camp, the first person you'd expect him to visit would be his home. He went right to the high school to seek out that SRO and thank him and show him, he passed boot camp and how proud he was. So I think hearing those perspectives from the students means so much, because I can just see the pride that our officers have from having those experiences. So any type of survey, evaluation that we could put together for that, I think would be beneficial for everyone, just to really see the impact that isn't measured necessarily in a report or a statistic, but the impact on these students that the SROs have. I would love to create the survey. I'll work with anybody to do that. I would really like to see that data.
Go past the next one. So with that also in mind, I a lot of times when it comes to like student serving positions, right? That being teachers, that being principals, that being social workers, that being SROs, we oftentimes don't realize the harm that we may be causing in our positions, right? And then it requires some sort of reflection. So I'm wondering if there's any opportunity for officers who are in the schools to one, I guess, reflect on that, and also thinking about like restorative practices, right? And if there is that case, or if because I love seeing all the positive, but I do want to see, like, I want to be a little bit of devil's advocate in this case. I want to know a little bit of both sides, right? So I'm wondering if there is a chance of reflection and what that may look like, and if there isn't, how can that be incorporated when it comes to, just the presence in the school. And I can speak from personal experience. Having a cop around me with like armed makes me feel uncomfortable, right? Just like in the same room. And so I can only imagine that maybe there's some students who feel the same way. So I'm wondering what that may look like. And if there is a chance of like officers actually sitting down and identifying, like, maybe I may be causing harm just my presence, and what I can do to, own that and build those relationships with those kids that wouldn't be able to.
Absolutely. So one of the things that was important to us is making sure a lot of instances you have just when an officer arrives in uniform can be intimidating to some people. Although our uniform is not meant to be intimidating, it can have that effect. So we took the opportunity to try and soften the uniform of the officer specifically, so they seem more approachable. And basically, they don't wear their hat. The badges are necessarily displayed. If they're going to go into a meeting, they have the ability to just basically wear a polo shirt with their name on it. And again, I think there's been conversations with students. A lot of times I've gone to the schools to read, and they ask about things on our duty belt. Just reassuring them that that's there to protect them is important. As far as a reflection, I think it is important for our officers to realize the impact they have, whether it be positive or negative. And oftentimes, if a situation, we're trained to de-escalate situations as they arrive. But oftentimes, you might find the best technique sometimes for a situation if our mere presence is uncomfortable, to step back, and our officers are trained to do that as well. So if there's a situation where it's being handled by administration and the officer comes in the room and seems to escalate it, they know immediately to try and step back so they're not escalating it in the situation. And again, I think the relationships they build, most students are comfortable with that. But again, they have to recognize those situations where someone might not be comfortable and move back from that. Just along with that, tell you a little bit of the plans for our police department as we move forward. We're working on a lot of different training. I'm actually creating some diversity training specifically for our department to make sure they engage the community better. There is diversity training out there, but being from Central Falls, growing up in this community, I've never left. I've worked in this community. I lived in this community my entire life. Central Falls is unique, so I'm building some training from the ground up, and I've reached out to local leadership and community members. Some of them you might be very familiar with. I had Manny De Silva sit on this commission with me, and basically I wanted to get things that are important to them, and they saw it to make sure our officers were doing that. And we're currently building that training now. The other thing we're looking to do is to certify our entire police department in nonviolence practices from the Institute of Nonviolence. My goal is to have the first police department in the state of Rhode Island to have their entire agency certified in the program. So we understand, it's difficult for many members of our community, especially, coming to this country where maybe where they came from, the police weren't necessarily looked at in a positive way, and we need to break down those barriers. And I'm all about building bridges, not walls, and that's the kind of the approach I'm taking. So we're going to make sure that our officers take a comfortable approach. And the point you bring up of reflection is extremely important, and I'm ensuring we get some more sensitivity training in this agency to ensure that continues.
Thank you. And one more, only because you did talk about developing it, and I did want to bring that up. So I'm wondering, I don't know how early in the stages it is, but seeing, and again, this is me as a person who doesn't even know what you're like developing right now, but trying to see if there's a way of framing it, not so much diversity training, but more anti-racist or racial insensitivity training, something that's more in that language, and bringing in folks who are like 100% trained in that, and that is their craft. That was one thing. And then two, also, I guess with that, I know the school district has been doing some stuff with their teachers in regards to like anti-racist training and stuff, and then other professional development opportunities. And I'm wondering how often the officers have the chance to actually be involved in those opportunities, particularly the ones like what has been recently happening with the anti-racism.
So the training I'm trying to develop, because I'm trying to get Central Falls specific. So I've brought in some local leaders, some individuals that are involved with the school department, some elected officials, and basically we had a brainstorm session that was supposed to go 2 hours, and we went about 3 hours, and just the conversations that opened up were fantastic. And a lot of what I'm trying to basically create is basically diversity, education, acceptance training, to be specific for Central Falls. We are using an instructor from Providence who trains their agency, and is also a professor at Salve Regina University to deliver this training. And again, I'm going to open it up after we train our department. It's transparent. All of our policies and our training is transparent. But I believe if the teachers have any training, I believe in most instances our SROs are afforded the availability to attend that. So if that remains open, like I said, any training that comes down that they can be benefited by, we open that door, and we love the opportunity to have them present for that.
Yeah, I would just add there that they're always welcome. I think depending on what's going on in the building, I would not want to frame it that they consistently are part of every single professional learning opportunity. But certainly, like as you said, Board Member Estrada, like we can be intentional when the trainings are most relevant, especially around the dedicated workshops around anti-racism.
Thank you.
That was it. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for indulging us. I have a few more questions, but luckily Brian and I apparently think exactly the same. So a lot of the questions that he asked were on my list, so I get to cross them off. But want to echo the comment / question about student voice. I'd love to hear from kiddos. I think overwhelmingly what I hear from kids in the district is they have a very positive a positive take on their relationship with SROs. So I imagine that that's what we would see from a focus group or from a survey, but it would be great to sort of get some concrete feedback. Also echo the idea of having SROs participate in some of the equity conversations and anti-racism discussions that are happening in the district. You know, it's not our prerogative to move or it's not our prerogative to sort of tell you what diversity training to, deploy for your staff, for your police department, but certainly the officers who spend time in our schools, it would just be advantageous, not just for them, but also for us to have them engage with us in those conversations. My question, this question is for Dr. Toledo. Dr. Toledo, I know that the funding for the SROs comes from the district's budget. Wondering if you could.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to ask, like, what is that figure? What does the line item look like?
So it's $90,000 per year. And so I think we can either see it as sort of the city and the district pay half for each, or we pay for one SRO and the city pays for another. So it's pretty much a split at this point.
Got it. My next question is, what does the SRO look like in the time of COVID? So I know that our high school and middle school, where the SROs actually have a physical, presence in, is not really a thing during COVID right now. So wondering what that role looks like right now.
Yeah. Principal McCarthy, could you share a little bit about the high school?
Well, I think obviously, we don't require an SRO in terms of the day-to-day operations at the school right now. There's only, 4 or 5 adults in the building at one time. So, but Randy has made himself available. And so when we've needed support in terms of technology distribution, when we've needed help in terms of any of those types of things that have involved kids needing to come into the building, then Randy's been there. He's also worked a little bit with Roberto in terms of the safety protocols that he would normally work on in the course of the summer. So he's been in and out, but he is not which I think makes sense, has not been a consistent presence.
Okay. Wondering about other districts. So districts like Providence, Woonsocket, Pawtucket, wondering if they've made decisions about SROs. And I just don't know. I just was wondering if Dr. Toledo, if you knew if any other districts have made a move on SROs, on either removing them or keeping. I'm just not sure.
I have not heard of anyone ending their program, but we'll certainly keep you posted if that is shared.
Let's see. And then my last question, Colonel Barzakowski, you mentioned something about that in some cases arresting students so that they go through the court system and obtain an evaluation. I forget what the term for it was, but some type of evaluation allows us to learn about some trauma, right, that may be causing potentially the issues. And so very sort of honestly, I struggle with the framing, right, that we have to arrest children or we have to arrest kids in order to understand some background trauma that might be impacting them. And so I understand the process that because the state pays for it or because someone pays for it, it allows us to sort of have access to that evaluation. But I'm just struggling with the framing of that, right? I think that I always think that we should err on not ever arresting a kiddo, especially if the reason behind it is to get information about background trauma. And so and this is not really a question, it's more of a reflection that I wanted to share, that just as much as possible, I don't know, I think we have to push ourselves to think deeper about how we get to that trauma without having to put kids through the court system ever. And I'm not an expert, I'm not naive. I know that there are situations certainly that warrant an arrest, but want to make sure that we're not framing it in a way that is ever a good thing, right? Because I think even if a child warrants arrest, I still think that it's a bad thing, right? It's a bad thing that a child would require arrest. And so just wanted to mention that. And then the last thing is just to go back to the comment about officers participating in some of the PD around anti-racism. Beyond that, I think like we're going through a moment right now with the relationship between police and communities of color, and I think as much as possible, I think we should center those conversations and be able to talk about them and understand how police officers are internalizing those situations, how they're reflecting on it, and how students are internalizing that as well. And so I don't know, I think that it's not business as usual. There's something big happening across the country, and certainly it's not happening in our schools, and it's not happening in our city right now, and maybe it never will, but those interactions in other places across the country, it matters, right? Because we all internalize it in different ways, right? I've watched it and I've internalized it, and this board has reflected on it at public meetings. Our staff is engaging in tough, difficult conversations in direct response to the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And so I think, and the reason we're having this conversation today is in direct relation to that. And so just want to make sure that we can always circle it back to certainly the importance of building these relationships and strengthening them. And I am proud that Central Falls has really taken that approach. When I lived in the city, it was one of the things that I was proud of, that the police department took that approach in building these relationships with the community, but that this is part of a much bigger sort of system, and that we shouldn't be afraid to sort of sit with the discomfort of talking about those relationships. So I thought it was going to end up in a question. It did not end up in a question, just more of a comment and a reflection. But thank you for engaging with us in this conversation. Like I said, we're not voting on anything today. I think this was more to give us a sense for what it looks like on the ground. And I think, again, I'd love to hear from kids. I'd love to hear from our students about their how they view their relationship with SROs. And then we'll take it from there. Anyone else have questions or comments? Glenda.
Just to piggyback off of what you said, I would love to invite Officer Randy and Officer Stephanie to come and speak on their personal experience. I would love to hear from them, and again, hear from the students as well. So that's an open invite.
Absolutely. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak tonight to you about this, and I welcome the opportunity to have our SRO speak to you directly.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so moving on, our next item on the agenda is public comment. So I will actually ask Dr. Toledo, I think the chat may be deactivated right now.
I'll check with Michael. Oh, it's on now.
Oh, it's on. Sorry, Oh, Michael is on. Sorry, I didn't realize he was on.
Yeah,
Okay, so we are in public comment right now. So if you are an attendee of the meeting, if you'd like to provide public comment to the board, please add your name to the chat. The chat should be enabled right now. And all right. Okay, so the first person is Jessica Parkhurst.
Sorry about that. I needed to unmute. Okay. I'm currently teaching full distance learning. Thankfully, I've been lucky enough to transition home and work 5 days from home, since all of my superheroes are using some type of device to connect to our lessons each day. 2 weeks ago, Superintendent Downey Toledo allowed all staff that were able to do their jobs from home to transition home to try and control the spread of COVID-19 among staff and students. A lesson so much with just that little email. Knowing that I could stay home for 5 days and keep myself and my family safe was a huge weight. All this being said, as I left the building on Friday, almost 3 weeks ago, while I was so thrilled for myself, my heart hurt for the rest of my colleagues that would not have an option to work the full 5 days from if they want. Knowing community spread is increasing daily, knowing that my colleagues are still in the building and working face-to-face with students is cause for concern. At the last few meetings, the board has asked what you can do to support us.
Jessica, I think we're losing you a little bit. Jessica, we're not hearing you right now. I'm sorry. Jessica? Jessica? I'm going to send her a chat. Maybe she'll.
I just sent her one.
Oh, okay, great.
Yes.
Jessica, I'm so sorry. There's a really long lag, but we didn't hear the last half of what you just said.
Maybe you can hear me better. Oh no. Hello?
Okay, we can hear you a little bit better now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hello? Are you? Hello?
Hi.
Okay, I'm just gonna, 1 second. I just wanna. Oh. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. So I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm sorry we couldn't get you to hear us.
That's okay. I'm trying to pick up kids and talk at the same time, so I just moved my car to a different location. Okay, I'm so sorry about that.
That's okay. We missed about the last half of that.
All right, I will circle back. 2 weeks ago, Superintendent Downey Toledo allowed all staff that were able to do their jobs from home to transition home to try and control the spread of COVID-19 among staff and students. I have to say that my stress level lessened so much with just that email. Knowing that I could stay home for 5 days and keep myself and my family safe was a huge weight off of my shoulders. All this being said, as I left the building on Friday, almost 3 weeks ago, While I was so thrilled for myself, my heart hurt for the rest of my colleagues that would not have an option to work the full 5 days from home if they wanted to. Knowing the community spread is increasing daily, knowing that my colleagues are still in the building and working face-to-face with students is cause for concern. At the last few meetings, the board has asked what you can do to support us. I have so many asks. We really don't have enough time for that tonight. But the first and most important in this time and in this moment is that you allow all staff to transition home. The community spread is being reported over 16%. Dr. Fine over the summer said our community should not send kids into the schools unless our spread was consistently at 1% or lower. The numbers continue to rise daily within CF and the state. It is dangerous and egregious that the governor no longer looks at what has changed over the last 6 weeks to determine why CF and RI and Rhode Island are all in the red. It is clear that the biggest change that has occurred in the last 6 weeks is that schools have reopened in some capacity. Last time I spoke to how great distance learning is going in Superhero headquarters, and I want to assure you all that we are still going strong. I won't sugarcoat it. This is a lot of work. It is endless hours designing and recreating lessons to fit our virtual world, but it is working. Families are working with me to ensure that kids are making their meetings and trying their best each day. This truly is an all-in team effort, and I am proud to say that though it isn't easy, it is successful. So please don't let the challenge of virtual learning dictate whether or not all of my colleagues and our students have the privilege to be working and learning from home to stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. All right, next we have Ashley Bro.
Good evening, everybody. I just have a quick question. What is the absent policy for children in the district with distance learning? Because Captain Hunt, my son, was marked absent even though he was learning throughout the day because he couldn't make a morning meeting. And his teacher said there are guidelines that have to be followed. If he doesn't attend the morning meeting, he is marked absent for the whole day. Where at VETS, my daughter's teacher is saying that distance learning kids are not marked absent because some kids don't have devices. So families like myself who are working with 2 children on one device and their schedules are pretty much at the same time or almost the same time, sometimes can't get on these meetings. So I'm just like a little concerned of why my child's getting marked absent even though he's learning at home every day. My children have never been absent from school. So I'm just wondering what the policy is there and if it's every school is doing something different or if it's a district-wide policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. We don't typically answer questions directly, but I think
I know
a broad enough question.
I know. Okay. I wanted Dr. Toledo to hear that and just maybe if she could clarify that to me in some way, that would be great.
That would be great. So I'll have Dr. Toledo connect with you afterwards so that you all can talk through that. Thank you for coming per usual, Ashley.
Thank you.
All right. So that ends the public comment portion of our meeting. Next, we will move on to item 7, which is superintendent comment.
Great. And I can reach out to Ashley absolutely tomorrow, but do want to say that there is a consistent policy, but sounds like it's not being implemented with that consistency. So we can make sure that everyone has that, but we certainly do not want to penalize anyone for not being able to access learning who doesn't have a device. But there is good news in the superintendent update ahead that will hopefully also solve for some of what Miss Bo was just sharing. Okay, so let's see here. Just gonna share my screen again. Okay, not many updates since we were together just 2 weeks ago, but did just want to share that it does seem like we have crossed over after countless months since March of feeling like we were just in emergency mode and firefighting all the time, that we pretty consistently, in speaking with teachers, with school leaders, with different directors, feel like we've sort of got our sea legs, and crossing into November felt like we could breathe a little easier, and really try to get back to where we were forward thinking. So we've talked a lot as a team about these first 2 weeks of November being a role and goal reset. I think a perfect example is if you think of someone like Assistant Superintendent Lynch, who since March has been assistant superintendent, then acting superintendent, then interim principal while also being an assistant superintendent. And this week was her first week back in the district office and in that sole role. And that was happening for countless people. So just something to celebrate, that we are staffed up in a way where we feel like we really can all be doing our primary roles, and are doing that reset. And part of that is our commitment to continuous improvement despite and through the circumstances of the pandemic. And so I think for the last few board meetings, we've been focused a lot on what are the ways that we're putting new processes in place, and focused very heavily on the health and safety appropriately, but did want to just emphasize some of the things that are happening currently, to make sure that we're really focused on improving teaching and learning too. So as everyone knows, we were awarded a comprehensive literacy grant from RIDE. And so that work has kicked off beautifully. We have high quality curricular materials from American Reading in every classroom, K-5. And each of the 4 participating schools has 10 days of embedded coaching. So on any given week, we have multiple days where that coaching is happening. And so that's been really exciting. Another big way that we're developing our team is we're partnering with the Annenberg Institute around their Ed Research for Recovery, which is an incredible compilation of research specifically to think about how to come through the pandemic and what are the needs of students and educators. And so there's a team of 7 of us, school and district leaders, that are participating in this series of workshops where we get to meet with the researchers who developed these briefs, and then also have team time to really think about how are we applying that research for the better of the students of CF. As another partnership, but again, just making sure that we're not just in the moment, but forward thinking. Just as we did last fall, we're partnering with some of the doctoral students in the Harvard program, and they're helping us think through some of the long-term fiscal issues that we've certainly raised here as a board and spoke of at the rally for equitable funding. And so just trying to get some more minds dedicated to thinking this through so that we can come up with some real sustainable solutions, and so many other things, but just wanted to take a moment to think about and share some of the forward thinking that we're doing. Related to that, on the next slide, wanted to just preview and, oops, 2 slides. That we are having some early conversations thinking about developing a 5-year plan for the district. And I know that this was something we had discussed pre-pandemic. We were even partnering with the Equity Institute to facilitate some community conversations and support a plan that really put the values of equity, empowerment, and excellence into and throughout the strategic plan. So wanted to just note it here so that if there is board feedback or questions around what that process could look like, we're very excited to be designing a process now that we could kick off in January to bring as many voices to the table to think about what the next 5 years look like for the district. And then my final slide is just one of gratitude. There are 450 hardworking people in and on Team CFSD. And I just want to thank every one of them. Some of these photos are from today when 1,000 Chromebooks arrived finally. And so that also ties, I think, to Ms. Bowe's comment about, you know, how tough it is when you have multiple students trying to share a device. So from this delivery today, that is the gym. If you don't recognize it, Michael has calculated it takes about 4 minutes per Chromebook to unbox and get it set up with the Wi-Fi. And I think that's incredibly efficient, but obviously we still need a few days, but we'll be working over the weekend. And families, you will be hearing from us early next week, especially our pre-K to third grade families, which are the families who have not received district devices yet. But we are that those will be in students' hands next week. And then the far right picture is just showing gratitude for how creative our teachers are getting, but also how complex distance learning can be. This is just one teacher's setup with 3 different devices to make it all happen. And so I just want to thank, whether you are leading in the classroom or leading by, you know, persistent calls to every Chromebook distribution facility to get these devices here, or if you are the person who is so incredibly, you know, doing the electromagnetic spraying of our classrooms, it's really taking every single team member. And so closing out just with incredible gratitude for all of them. Any questions?
Any questions for Dr. Toledo? Not seeing any hands.
Yeah.
Oh, Ugo. Yep.
Yes, sir. How many Chromebooks exactly? 1,000?
So this is just part of the order. We had received 1,000 before school started. So that's how we were able to distribute to 7th to 12th grade, but another 1,000 arrived today.
Wow. So how many? So some students were using like all Chromebooks, right? Or I know some didn't have at all, right?
Many didn't have them at all. So our first goal is to make sure we have purchased enough Chromebooks so that every student would have a Central Falls issued device, so that we would be 1-to-1. We still have Chromebooks that are outstanding and have not arrived, but this shipment will get us to the point where every student who has said, I don't have access to a device at home, will have one.
So also, they're gonna be at the high school during the weekend, joining this to the.
Not to distribute, so it's going to take some time.
No, I know. But what I'm saying is like set up with the wireless and the other things. So I just want to know if I can stop by and give a few hours.
That's so generous. I would recommend connecting with Michael for the exact hours that they'll be there. But yes, we have set up shop in the high school gym. But worth noting for families who are here this evening, the tech support has shifted to the McKenna Center just across the street from the high school. So distribution will still happen from the high school, but we are trying to run 5 days a week, just open hours where families can come by and get that tech support if needed and talk to someone. So that's at the McKenna Center.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Brian?
Hi. 2 questions. So do we have enough now, or will we have enough now that we'll be able to, I guess, return the ones that we borrowed from the neighboring schools that let us borrow? That was the first one, which you can answer, and then I'll ask the next part.
Okay, so interestingly, the 600 of the 750 that we were receiving, 600 of them had not arrived for one of the giving districts. So those, yeah, so we were able to say to them, oh, thanks, but it's not necessary anymore. The 150 that came from BVP, we're able to either replace, or we're actually maybe gonna just pay them because their devices were a lot nicer. It's a whole thing, but yeah, we're in a really good place.
Good. And I was wondering if there was any kind of collaboration. I'm not sure if you've mentioned this or if like I've I've completely blanked, but if there's been, I know Cox is currently doing that thing where it's like cheaper for like if Title I schools connect with them or like with like low income families. And I'm wondering if we've found a way to develop some sort of partnership with them, or if we've contacted them specifically, because one thing is getting the device, second thing is connecting it, right? Like if you can't get on the Meet, then the computer means nothing, right? So.
Yeah, we've been working on a few different approaches to address it more systemically so that it's not like every family having to negotiate with Cox. We've streamlined it slightly where if we give them, with obviously the family's approval, information of saying this is a household that has a student, they have streamlined some of their processes, but we're not yet at the point and you know, have continued to talk to the city about trying to make sure that there is just citywide broadband. And so we've actually been partnering with a lot of the charter leaders and trying to figure out something that would be much more global and system-wide of a solution. So we'll keep working on that because it's frustrating to try to tackle it one Cox call and one hotspot at a time. So
thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Toledo? Sonia?
Just a strategic plan. So in January, you hope to start the extra conversations, but right now you're developing what it's going to look like, and who's doing that, and what does that look like?
Just the process. So like designing not the what, but how. So are we going to have, especially in the context of a pandemic, like how will we involve family voice, student voice, community voice, teacher voice, and you know, all of that. So we're just starting to brainstorm what the process should look like. And so Carla Estrada from the Equity Institute has been a thought partner as we had started to talk about this back in January of 2020, pre-pandemic, but thinking about some originally it was going to be like some weekend retreats where we could do some work that's facilitated by the Equity Institute to try to get a real collaborative process going. So those are the conversations that are happening now around process, not about the actual plan itself.
Thank you.
If anyone wants to be part of those conversations, we'd love the input.
I'm always interested in the creation of the process itself, because that would in many ways will dictate the result, right? And so I just wanted to hear what your framework and hearing. I enjoyed Carla's work when she worked with us way back then, but just sort of what framework you were choosing to do this, especially in a community like ours and in the middle of a pandemic.
Right.
If we're talking about what 5 years looks like, when even next June is so abstract.
I could bring a proposal to the board at the December meeting, perhaps, that you guys could respond to and give any feedback to make sure that we're bringing all voices to the table. And would that work?
Sure, I appreciate that.
Any other comments or questions for Dr. Toledo? Scrolling through my spaces here, seeing none. All right. So thank you for that update. The next item is board comments. Glenda.
Yes. So although I am very grateful for Ms. Parkhurst, I know her very well, and all the hard work she puts in with distance learning, I have to disagree with the 100% distance learning at this time. Last week, I met with a family that one of her daughters, who is a 9th grader, was an honor student last year at Calcut. This child this year is failing every single class in high school. The mom is in tears. She was looking for another job. She wanted me to find her a tutor that would come to her house. She's desperate. So although things may be working for some, It's not working for everyone. And it truly breaks my heart that this child is failing, and she was an honor student. What are we going to do how can we change this? What do we need to do to support our teachers? What do we need to do to support our families? We cannot let our kids fail. How many students are currently failing right now? How many? So if I can get a number, I would love to hear it, because I'm sure she is not alone. She is a bright young girl and she's failing every class. I spoke to her directly. I said, what can I do to help you? She said, I need to be in school. I need a teacher in front of me to help me. I can't do this at home. She has a sibling who's in 10th grade who tries to help her sister. They are great girls. And it's not working for her at all. So there needs to be a support system for these families. And I'm sure she's not alone. So although for some it's going great, I've seen the work Ms. Parkhurst has done with her students and her Bitmoji. It's fantastic, I love it, but it's not working for everybody. And our students are failing. And I'm sure it's a lot of them. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
I appreciate you sharing that. I think, you know, when we as a board initially made a decision back in, I think maybe October, maybe late September, about whether we were going to be, you know, full distance, you know, full in person. Certainly we were driven by guidance from the state, but it was also about ensuring that families had choice. And your example, what the story you just shared, is like a perfect example of why students deserve choice and families deserve choice. It's not always easy to make that happen. I mean, we have to go back to the fact that we are living through this pandemic, and it's real, and it's definitely getting worse. And so as decision makers, as leaders, we need to take all of that into account. It's not as easy as saying, okay, 100% distance learning or 100% in person, because that doesn't work for everyone. And we have to be responsive to our families, of course. And so I think for the next meeting in December, Dr. Toledo, if we could have a part of your update be specifically around, you know, what we're seeing in terms of grades, what we're seeing in terms of even feedback from families that we might be getting about what's working and what's not, a sort of qualitative / quantitative update about what's going on. I think that would be really helpful to give Glendalisa's anecdote some context. And we're going to be dealing with this for some time, right? Even if we were to do full distance, right? I think there are families who would still choose to keep their kiddos at home. And so we're not going to solve this. We're not going to come up with a solution for the district that will satisfy every single person. And there are just a number of things that we have to take into consideration. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And yeah, I think it would be really helpful for us to hear an update specific to the experience of students and families around what they think they're missing and what they think they need, what they believe they need.
The timing of the December meeting is perfect too, because first quarter will close on the 19th. We'll also have parent-teacher conferences between now and then. So to your point about both qualitative and quantitative. And then also we are in the final days of STAR testing. So the state actually required all districts to put in place some assessments. There were 4 options, and we already were a district using the STAR assessment system. So we that data is due to ride the 13th of November, so next week. And so most of our students have at this point completed that, but it will give us some information that we can share. Certainly not a comprehensive story of who our kids are, but I can make sure that that's part of the December board meeting.
Right, anyone else have board comment? Hugo?
Well, I just want to encourage these parents, that the kids are doing bad, not to wait until the end. So I would like to, have them to talk directly to Mr. Toledo, so they can find a solution, not wait until the end, So it would be good if they can go directly to her, I don't know where these kids are, but in high school or Calcat, but I would like to have them to talk directly to, Mr. Toledo in order to fix this issue and not wait until, it gets worse. And also, I would like to thank Mr. McCarthy for, thank you, Mr. McCarthy, for sharing that info yesterday. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
All right, anyone else have other comments? Bryant?
No, I just wanted to thank Dr. Toledo and Principal McCarthy and the Colonel as well for being willing to engage in the conversation that we had, being willing to, listen to us as board members, as community members, and being critical in regards to the presence or absence of police officers in schools, right? And particularly in our school buildings. So thank you for that. And to any three of you or anyone else, I'd be more than happy to, pass on any resources that I may have, or if you want to engage in any further conversation with me, I'm more than happy to do that. That's the first thing. Second thing, this is just to anyone listening. We are currently in a very interesting state right now in this country's history. So all I ask is that for folks to take care of themselves, practice what you think to be as your, or whatever you seem to have as self-care at these moments, especially while we deal with the anxiety that is our election. That's been lasting for too long. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so that brings us to executive session. We are moving into executive session. Dr. Toledo, will we be coming back into public session? Are we announcing?
Yes, there would be one vote.
Okay. So there will be a vote and we will be coming back into public session. And so I will entertain a motion to move into executive session if someone can read the full text of the agenda item. Por favor.
Give me a second, I'll pull it up.
Second.
I have to read it, hold on. Okay, I move that we enter into executive session under Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5, parentheses A, parentheses 2, session pertaining to litigation matter entitled Central Falls School District Board of Trustees versus Central Falls Teachers Union and Nancy Rafferty pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5, parentheses A, parentheses 2.
Motion was made by Sonia Grace. I believe, Andrew, did you second?
Yes,
Or
I
you
did.
seconded in the motion? All those in favor, please say, we need a roll call vote. Hugo Figueroa,
Yes.
Sonia Grace,
Yes.
Andrew Bramson,
Yes.
Brian Estrada,
Yes.
Diosa Martinez,
Yes.
Glenda Liz Colon.
Yes.
Okay, so we are now moving into executive session. Board members, Dr. Toledo sent you an email with a different link for a Zoom for us to be in executive session, and then we will return to this meeting to announce the vote.
Can
Thank you, everyone.
Can you please send me that? I deleted by mistake. Can you please send me that?
Yeah,
link
I'll
again?
forward it to you. Yep.
Thank you.
I don't even, she's saying that, I don't know, I don't remember. I have to look for the email.
You
I don't do it in the same thing.
Oh, since it's executive, we can't. Yeah.
Okay, so we are waiting for Dr. Toledo, Hugo. Brian, oh no, Brian's here. Diosa. Sorry, Hugo, I didn't even notice. Sorry, Hugo, I did not notice that you were back on. I was waiting for you. All right, so I'll entertain a motion to seal the minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Andrew Bramson,
Second.
seconded by Brian Estrada. All those in favor, or any discussion, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the executive session minutes are sealed. So during executive session, the board voted to unanimously approve the recommendation by Dr. Toledo regarding the case of the Central Falls Board of Trustees versus the Central Falls Teachers Union and Nancy Raftery. That is the final item on the agenda. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
To adjourn?
Second.
Motion made by Sonia Gray, seconded by Andrew Bramson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.